thank you for being here to hear what I have to say. And I think it's also timely in this era of so much stress and uncertainty. When people are dealing with anxiety and insomnia and racing thoughts, you may find some nuggets in here that are helpful to you. So I wanted to flesh out my introduction a tiny bit, just because this is my official bio. And when I presented this similar webinar through the School for Social Work, the woman who was the coordinator was asking me, how did I even get into mental health nutrition? She wanted to hear a little bit of the story behind what drew me to this kind of esoteric and unusual niche. So as you heard, I'm an LCSW and nutritionist. I practice in Boulder and online. And in my practice, I actually specialize in working a lot with people around relationship with food and the body. So eating disorders, disordered eating, but also trauma, PTSD, anxiety. I also, though, do this weird, unique thing called mental health nutrition. So how did I come to that? Well, as you can probably guess, I had my own healing journey with food. I became a vegan when I was 10, but I was a junk food vegan. So, and this was for ethical reasons that I did this, but I really struggled with issues with mood swings and energy and cravings and things like that. So when I was in my mid-20s, I was living in the Bay Area. I was a social worker at this time, and I was working at a psychiatric unit. I started my own journey around healing my relationship with food, and I was working with a holistic nutritionist. I went from really not knowing how to cook, like I would like boil pasta and put red sauce from a jar on it, or pour a bowl of cereal for breakfast, to actually teaching holistic cooking classes. And it was a profound process for me in many ways. One thing I became inspired to do was working at this psych unit, which was a subacute unit. It was a locked unit for people with severe mental illness. I didn't understand how we as a culture thought that to help these people who are struggling with these kind of mental health issues, you should stuff them full of psych meds, stuff them into a dreary institution, give them limp broccoli and pasta to eat, and expect them to feel better. It did not make sense to me. So I approached the administrator of the program, and I had just enrolled in holistic nutrition school at the time. So I was feeling really inspired about improving nutrition. And I asked him if we could develop some sort of farm to table program at this psych unit. The Bay Area has really, for a long time, been at the epicenter of those kinds of movements. And he was, to his credit, very interested and agreeable. So I established a food reform project at this place. I brought in a holistic nutritionist. We had beautiful grounds. And so we created gardens for vegetables and herbs. We brought the vegetables and herbs that we meaning the clients and the therapists, grew. We brought this to dietary services, and they started integrating these foods into the meals. I taught healthy cooking classes, things like that. And that program is actually still going on. I think it's like 13 years down the road. I still get photos from the same horticultural therapist who started there 13 years ago. She's still there. But that was only holistic nutrition. I was only being trained at that time in general holistic nutrition. It wasn't even these specific mental health nutrition approaches. So kind of like the idea of functional medicine for mental health that I'm going to share with you today. When I moved to Boulder, I started my practice. I met a woman named Christina Veselak, who is now my mentor. She started the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition, who I teach my course through. And she told me that she had established a mental health nutrition program at a substance abuse recovery center, and the nutritionist who was running it was leaving. Would I like to take over? And I said, that sounds great, but I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I can talk to you about food quality. I have no idea how to support neurotransmitter production with supplements. I have no idea how to assess if someone is having substance cravings because they're low in certain nutrients. And she said, I'll give you 4 books to read and I'll coach you, and we've got a month. So for someone who is not a science person, definitely not like a natural biochemistry person, this was kind of a trial by fire. I crammed, and I'll never forget walking in that first day, and the clinical director at this substance abuse recovery center handed me a huge stack of files and said, "You have 9 intakes to do," meaning I have 9 new clients to meet with who I've never met with before, and I have to fill out their entire supplement chart based on my assessment of them. That was overwhelming. But I learned quickly. And what I saw was phenomenal. I saw people who had been relapsing for years or decades get to a point of emotional and physical stability with this mental health nutrition that they had never been able to achieve since they were young. People who are in early recovery from substance abuse are very depleted. Drugs and alcohol deplete neurotransmitters, those feel-good chemicals in your brain that, when you're low in them, you will have issues with mood, sleep, energy, focus, substance cravings. Substance abuse depletes nutrients. When you're low in certain nutrients, you can have mental health issues. And so the idea of let's just have people get sober and do 12-step and do therapy, you are missing how to restore someone's biochemistry. And so what I saw with client after client using the mental health nutrition approaches, it was like you have a wilted flower and you're pouring water on it. People just bloomed. So I started integrating these approaches into my practice. I embed them in the front end of my practice with all of my clients. I see a lot of people just for mental health nutrition, and I get really phenomenal results. I say somewhere on my website that I can count the number of people who have seen no change on 2 hands and 1 foot. And that's after seeing hundreds of people. So I'm really excited to introduce this to you. The way this talk is structured is that I'm going to be lecturing, which is really not my favorite mode of teaching, but it's a webinar. It is what it is, for probably about an hour and 15 minutes, and then we'll have time for Q&A. If I don't get to your question, feel free to email me directly. I also want to name, as I said earlier, I don't really consider myself an intense science person. I am not a biochemist. So this talk is going to be geared at a very 101 level, which works for me. Hopefully that will work for you. So, don't feel intimidated. This subject indeed is infinitely complex. It has to do with anatomy and physiology. There's lots that I don't know about it, but we're going to be kind of doing a 1-hour overview, scratching the surface introduction. Okay, so let's start by getting on the same page about this term, mental health nutrition. What is mental health nutrition? Mental health nutrition is the art and science of using supplements and nutrition to stabilize biochemistry and reduce or eliminate mental health symptoms, including depression, anxiety, insomnia, substance cravings, ADD, ADHD, bipolar. I've worked successfully with people presenting with all of these issues. And yes, it can be done naturally. And I'm fleshing this out because often when I talk about mental health nutrition, people think that I'm just going to tell them to eat a salad. No, it's about a lot more than that. And it's also not about being rigid with food. It's about understanding how to stabilize biochemistry using natural approaches. Why do we need mental health nutrition? Well, as a therapist, I may have a client coming to me saying, I have anxiety and insomnia. Those symptoms may be emotional in nature, they may be biochemical in nature, they may be both. So if I'm only coming from a psychological lens, I'm going to be talking to them about what's your stress level at work like? What's your sleep hygiene routine like? Do you have unresolved trauma that we need to look at, right? But if the anxiety and insomnia is coming from dysregulated blood sugar, low serotonin, low GABA, we can be doing therapy for months or years and just chasing our tails and never solving the problem because we're not addressing the biochemical root of the issue. And if we know these approaches, we can fix this very quickly. I mean, supplements you can feel in a matter of minutes. There are some supplements that people take that they can feel a difference in 20 minutes. So it makes sense to do this at the beginning of therapy. so that you start to stabilize, okay, what is biochemical? And then people improve. And then, okay, whatever is left is for us to work on emotionally. Which is why I developed this course that we mentioned earlier. I teach a course to psychotherapists called Mental Health Nutrition for Psychotherapists Foundations. It's just 101 approaches I think every therapist should know. And I kind of think everyone should know. Okay, so because I'm not a science person, I learn in a story way. I learn in a narrative way. I'm very drawn to stories. And I don't remember a lot of what I've learned throughout my life in school, but what I remember came in story form. So I'm going to be offering a lot of stories through this talk. And here is the first story for you. We're zooming out. We have to start with a real macro, wide angle perspective before we zoom in on mental health nutrition. We have to set the stage. And here's how I'm setting the stage. I want to tell you a story about a dentist who lived in Cleveland at the turn of last century. His name was Weston A. Price. Sounds like a funny way to start off this talk, but bear with me. Weston A. Price started noticing that his patients were coming in with increased dental problems like cavities and gum disease. And he theorized that this was connected to their diet. Now remember, at the turn of last century, so this was the 1800s into the 1900s, a lot was changing in the American landscape. Specifically, this is when the Industrial Revolution was really getting into full swing. So many things about our lifestyle were shifting, one of which was food. White flour and white sugar were beginning to be staples on people's tables in cities, and they were beginning to be available to people in mass quantities that had before now never been known. These were not foods that we had been eating for thousands of years. So what Weston A. Price did to test his theory was really interesting approach. I kind of wish I could do this. He traveled to 6 different continents. The only one he didn't go to was Antarctica. And he studied humans who were living in their isolated communities, still consuming their native diets, so the diets they had been eating for thousands of years. And he was able to contrast them with their neighbors down the road who were living in urbanized settings. And we know that these people had similar gene pools because people weren't moving around at this time. So very similar gene pools, living in the urban settings, eating an industrialized diet, or what Weston A. Price termed the foods of commerce. And this was white flour and white sugar. What he found was striking, and he wrote his findings in a book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, which if you're a food science, history, or anthropology nerd, it's really worth checking out, if only for the photos. The photos are worth 1,000 words. When he looked at the individuals who were living in their indigenous ways and consuming their native diet, he found that they had a lower incidence, much lower incidence of dental issues, but also they had many more markers of health. They had well-functioning immune systems. Their bodies were very resilient. They were very athletically capable. Their societies were peaceful. Their skeletal systems were very well-formed. Contrast this with the neighbors down the road living in the industrialized setting, eating the foods of commerce. These individuals had a higher rate of dental decay, but also skeletal systems that were clearly impacted by malnutrition, more violent societies, less resilient immune systems, and they were just less strong. They were less athletically capable. Now, was the only difference in these settings the diet? Of course not. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about how the change from the agrarian culture that we had been living in for a few hundred years, and of course the hunter-gatherer culture that precedes it, how these changes to a urbanized culture have many downstream effects that negatively impact mental health. But diet was a huge issue. So what were the main differences? The industrialized food, the white flour and the white sugar, it lacks nutrients. So the wheat and the sugar are processed in such a way that strips them of nutrients. When we eat highly processed food, not only does it lack nutrients, but it is actively depleting to our system. So, what that means is that the body has to draw on its existing stores of minerals just to process this weird food that it doesn't recognize, because it doesn't. Think about it from an evolutionary perspective. We didn't evolve to eat this kind of food, we evolved in harmony with the plants and animals around us. That's what we know how to digest, that's what we know how to make use of. Contrast this to the traditional food that our ancestors ate for thousands of years. These were high in natural fats, protein dense, rich in complex carbohydrates, so whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and very dense in micronutrients, so those vitamins and minerals. So this would look like, for instance, in Scotland, right? He went to Scotland and the traditional people were eating raw milk and fish fresh from the sea and seaweed and soaked oats. And then their neighbors in the cities were eating toast and tea with sugar. Like, what a contrast in terms of the nutrients that you're getting. So I want to give you just a little snippet of what happened, for example, with our wheat. Why is this processed industrialized wheat so problematic for us? And I like telling people this story because, nowadays everyone's heard of the gluten-free diet. And we have a lot of people saying, well, why suddenly is everyone allergic to gluten? Like, my grandparents ate gluten and they were fine, gluten being the small protein that is located in wheat. Well, the wheat that our ancestors consumed is very, very different than the wheat that we're eating today. Here's why. Our ancestors, first of all, would breed wheat for low gluten content because gluten is actually irritating to the gut. In our modern day, we breed wheat for high gluten content because it makes the bread fluffy. So our ancestors would breed the wheat to be most digestible, less harsh on our gut. They would plant a variety of different strains of wheat, whereas now we only use a few different strains. And then when they would harvest, they would cut the sheaves of wheat and leave them on the sides of the field. Overnight, the dew would come down and sprout the wheat. Why? Well, all edible plants have in them enzymes that inhibit their digestion. This is their protective mechanism because they don't have feet to run away or fangs to fight. Sprouting actually denatures, actually breaks down some of those enzymes that inhibit our digestion. So it makes the food more digestible. Then our ancestors would take that wheat and put it through a multi-day fermentation process, which further broke down those enzymes that prevented the digestion and made the nutrients in the wheat more bioavailable. So by the time it was baked and turned into bread, you have a product that at every step of the way was conscientiously treated to make it most digestible and most nutrient dense. This is very different than the wheat today. So as I mentioned, we're breeding for high gluten content. Most of the wheat in the country is genetically modified. And there are many studies connecting GMO food and the glyphosate that it is sprayed with causing problems hormonally, causing problems with the gut. So if you have problems with the gut, as you'll learn later in the talk, you are very likely to have problems such as depression, anxiety, low energy, creates inflammation in the gut, inhibits our ability to make neurotransmitters, many of which are made in the gut. Disrupting your hormones, of course, that's very likely to cause you also issues with mental health. So we've got this GMO wheat that's been bred for high gluten content. We certainly are not sprouting it. We certainly are not fermenting it, but we are refining it. So we're changing it from that whole wheat to that white. And in the refining process, the parts of the wheat that contain the most nutrition are stripped from it. So we end up with a product that doesn't have a lot of nutrients and that is actually pretty irritating to our system. This is what is on the shelves when we walk into the grocery store in the form of bread, in the form of pasta, in the form of cereal. It's a huge bummer. People don't know. So Sugar, similar. I'm not going to get into the story of sugar just for the sake of time. If you're interested, there's some amazing books about the history of sugar, but sugar also started as a much more whole food and then turned refined. It has a number of problematic effects on our health, including on our mental health. So, of course, again, in the spirit of zooming out and naming what else is contributing to this epidemic of mental health issues that we have, there are so many sociocultural changes that were initiated during the Industrial Revolution that are having a negative impact on our mental health. Urbanization itself, overcrowding, pollution, increased violence, disconnection from social supports. All of that is going to cause mental health issues. Economic disparity, when we shifted from a hunter-gatherer and then agrarian culture to a industrialized culture, capitalism came with it. It means we now have people who are very poor. Poverty is going to cause mental health issues because it's stressful. Disconnection from nature. We were designed to be in constant contact with nature and with our community. We were designed to be under the sun all day wearing loincloths. Lack of adequate sunlight has negative effect on serotonin, which is a feel-good neurotransmitter, and on our vitamin D. Being low in these can cause mood issues. Disconnection from nature itself is what the whole field of eco-psychology is aiming to restore. That understanding that being connected up with this truly healing force that we were designed to be in constant contact with is crucial for our well-being. So I researched all of these and found a whole bunch of studies to back all of this up. It's kind of funny that we need studies, but this is why. I mean, we are living in a way that we were not designed to live. Sedentary behavior. We were designed to be moving all day. Erosion of social support. We were designed to be living in close contact with community, and excessive screen time. Our nervous systems were not set up to be in front of a screen where we are getting constant trickles of apocalyptic information from all over the world. No, that's not how we are built. So what is the result of all of this? Significant mental health issues. Here's some statistics from the National Institute for Mental Health. In any given year, 1 in 5 employed adults in the US is suffering from a mental health issue. Now, a lot of people who are dealing with mental health issues are not even able to be employed because they can't function. So all of these people are not even being counted in this statistic. 1 in 5 youth between the ages of 13 and 18 is living with a severe mental health disorder. If you're a therapist like me, or if you're friends with therapists, you know that we are in an epidemic of mental health issues right now. And there's a way that our conventional medical culture, our conventional mental health world likes to locate the problem within the individual. Like, you have anxiety, you have depression. What I really see and the way I understand things is that we are having normal responses to an incredibly out of balance and disconnected culture and way of living. And I love this quote. It sums it up for me. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. The standard American lifestyle has a profoundly negative effect on our physical, mental, and emotional health. So now let's start to zoom in more on mental health. What has conventional mental health given us as a solution? Psychiatric medications. Now, I want to say I am not giving this talk to try and convince you or anyone you know to stop taking psych meds. If you're taking something and you find it helpful, by all means, keep doing it. But what I am going to introduce to you in this talk is a way of thinking that is different than the conventional, allopathic, one-size-fits-all model of you're depressed, you need an SSRI, you need Prozac or Zoloft, right? You need something to boost your serotonin. What I am inviting us to do is start to look at a naturopathic approach, which is to try to find the true root of the problem. If someone is depressed, There are many different reasons for that aside from serotonin deficiency. Biochemically, I can think of many: low catecholamines, low thyroid, dysregulated hormones, poor diet, inflammation, poor functioning gut, poor sleep. The list goes on and on. Looking to find the true root of the problem, and then using natural approaches to heal that so that the symptom of depression resolves. So if we have something like depression, that is a symptom, that is like the fire alarm going off saying something is out of balance. Please try to find the fire. Please try to find the fire and heal that so that this symptom isn't waving that red flag. I hope that makes sense. So just some statistics about antidepressant use in America. These are from a book called A Mind of Your Own by Kelly Brogan. She's a psychiatrist. She only practices in a naturopathic way now. She originally was trained and practiced in the conventional way. Her book is about women and depression. She writes 11% of all Americans, 25% of whom are women in their 40s and 50s, are taking antidepressants. I mean, we could have a whole 1 hour talk right there about why are 25% of the people who are on antidepressants women in their 40s and 50s? Like, do they need antidepressants or do they need something else desperately from this culture? The use of antidepressants has increased almost 400% from 1998 to 2008, making them the third most commonly prescribed drug across all ages. This explosion does not necessarily signify increase in depression, although there is an increase, because the pharmaceutical companies are testing SSRIs for other things aside from depression. I find this statement really striking. We are spending more on antidepressants than the gross national product of more than half of the world's countries. 60% of people on antidepressants stay on them for more than 2 years and 14% for more than a decade. Now, I think this is notable because as a therapist, I know a lot of us therapists who don't know about these natural approaches for mental health. We may be working with a client who just like cannot climb out of that dark hole. And so we suggest short-term antidepressant use just to give them a boost, to get them a little ground under their feet while we really work the emotional end. And then it's like, okay, after maybe 3 months or 6 months or 10 months, we look at having you come down off of it. So a lot of us are thinking about short-term use. This is not how a lot of them are being used. They're being used long-term. Side effects. There are some significant side effects to psychiatric medications. In its first 12 years after its initial marketing blitz, Prozac was named in over 40,000 reports of adverse effects submitted to the FDA. I have had clients who were depressed, not suicidal, went on psych meds, specifically SSRIs, and became suicidal. I have a client who was not homicidal, went on an SSRI, and became homicidal. We all know people who go on antidepressants and say, yeah, it's affecting my libido. I'm not able to orgasm, but yeah, I think it's helping with my mood. I think it's really sad that as a culture, we have just come to believe that, all right, well, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Mental health nutrition, there are not side effects. And if anything, mental health nutrition should help your libido because you're feeling better. So now let's zoom in to mental health nutrition itself. And we're just going to start by looking at food, at nutrition. And we're looking at something that we call the standard American diet. I'm going to invite you just to take a few moments right now to reflect on what you think the average American eats in a typical day. What are we eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks? So I'm just going to give a few moments and let you reflect on that. So I work in Boulder and I live in Boulder. And in Boulder, there's a really high degree of awareness around nutrition. So what the average person is eating here in Boulder is different than what the average person is eating around the rest of the country. When I have a client who does not live in Boulder and I ask them what they eat in a typical day, usually the answer goes something like this. Well, I skip breakfast, or I drink just coffee, or I grab something at Starbucks like a pastry. And then at lunch, I'll have a sandwich, or someone's skipping lunch or having something with pasta. And then dinner will usually be a protein with some kind of vegetable and maybe something more bread oriented. So think about this in context to what we just talked about with Weston A. Price and the diets. The traditional diet that was so rich in good fats and good proteins and vegetables and fruits and whole grains. And then the modernized diet, which is white flour and white sugar. We're still kind of eating that, aren't we? Where's the nutrient density in the average American's diet? So this brings me to my first principle that everyone should know, that our standard American diet of processed food with low nutrient density has a profoundly detrimental effect on mood, sleep, energy, and focus. Now, each of these principles that I'm going to give to you, I could teach like a day-long class on. But I'm just going to give you a few little bits of information about each. The standard American diet causes nutrient depletion and malnutrition. It causes inflammation and gut dysbiosis, which is basically when your gut bacteria is out of balance. And it causes blood sugar dysregulation. We are going to go through each of these three principles for the rest of the talk. The second and third we'll get to a bit later. We'll be focusing on the first. Initially, they're all intertwined. So the first thing that I want to say, we're establishing that the standard American diet is low in nutrients. The first thing I want to say is that nutrient deficiency itself can cause mental health symptoms. And for the sake of this talk, I'm just going to highlight a few examples of this. One example I want to take is B vitamins. So B vitamin deficiency can cause mental health issues in a number of ways. B vitamins are a cofactor in manufacturing neurotransmitters, meaning those feel-good chemicals like serotonin, dopamine, endorphins, you've probably heard of some of those. You need adequate levels of B vitamins in order to make enough of those neurotransmitters. If you don't have enough B vitamins, you will not make enough neurotransmitters. And you are going to have negative fallout with your mood and sleep and energy and cravings as a result. In many studies, B vitamin deficiency has been connected to everything from anxiety to depression, insomnia, night terrors, psychosis, substance cravings. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how this can show up. And one is a very interesting food history example, and one is an example with a client of mine. So in the early 1900s in the American South, there was this epidemic for a couple of decades of people just having these horrible symptoms. People were experiencing these really high rates of irritability and psychosis and aggressiveness and diarrhea and dementia, and they were dying at high rates. And people didn't know why. And as I said, it went on for a few decades. Eventually, without getting into why, it was figured out that these people had something called pellagra, which is the name for B vitamin deficiency. Why did they have it? Well, corn had been a staple crop for them. It actually has been a staple crop for the native people of this country always, but it was a staple crop for this population in the American South. There are ways of processing corn that can liberate B vitamins in them. It can make B vitamins in them bioavailable. And there are ways of processing corn that do not. It will not allow you to access them. In the American South, they were processing corn in this way that allowed them to access those B vitamins. However, increased cotton production displaced the southern corn mills. So the corn mills had to go away, cotton production increased, so the Southerners started having to get their corn from the Midwest. The Midwesterners did not process their corn in a way that allowed us to access the B vitamins. So a population that was getting adequate B vitamins suddenly did not, and this resulted in all of these symptoms. So what happened? After a couple decades, people started fortifying this population's food with B vitamins, and these symptoms resolved. No more psychosis, diarrhea, dementia, irritability, death. I mean, of course, still death. Of course, still all of those, but in much lower appropriate rates. Now, here's an example from a client that I had. I had a client who was a young man in his late 20s. He was in early recovery from alcohol when I started working with him. He reported depression that had started from day one. He reported that drinking alcohol relieved this depression, and he reported having night terrors for as long as he could remember. He wasn't drinking, but he was depressed. He was craving alcohol. He was having those night terrors. And he was worried he would relapse because drinking was the thing that would relieve this. Now, being a mental health nutritionist and trained in these weird specific protocols, I know about a condition called pyroluria. Pyroluria is a genetic condition, and it means that when your body synthesizes hemoglobin, don't worry about what that means, but basically when your body does something, it creates these little byproducts called cryptopyrroles, little waste products, okay? It creates little waste products that need to be escorted out of the system. And we all create these. B vitamins and zinc are needed to escort these waste products out of the system. Someone with pyroluria creates a huge number of these waste products, way more than the normal person. So that means that they need a huge number of B vitamins and zinc to help excrete these waste products. If you don't know that, and you are not actively taking more B vitamins and zinc, you are then going to have some serious symptoms of B vitamin and zinc deficiency. Pyroluria is also common amongst people who have Native American and Western European descent. And a common feature of pyroluria is people turning to alcohol to relieve this type of depression, and depression from as long as they can remember. So I gave this young man who was of Irish descent a questionnaire on pyroluria. He answered yes to every question. I put him on a simple pyroluria protocol to give him more B vitamins and zinc. Within a week, I saw him a week later. He said, my mood is so much better. I'm not having night terrors anymore, and I am not craving alcohol. Yes, miraculous results like this are possible when you know what you're doing with mental health nutrition. So this changed this young man's life, and it made it so much easier for him to stay sober because he wouldn't need to then pick up alcohol to address these symptoms that were still there. And if he had gone to the conventional medicine route, he would have been put on an SSRI, and he would have been told to go to 12-step and given a sleeping med for his night terrors. And the issue of the B vitamin deficiency and the zinc deficiency never would have been discovered or resolved. This is why I do this stuff. So that's just one example. There are many other nutrient deficiencies that can cause mental health symptoms. Omega-3 deficiency connected to depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. Vitamin D deficiency, as I said earlier, can be connected to low energy and depression. Zinc deficiency, vitamin C, magnesium, the list goes on. So how are we usually getting these micronutrients, these vitamins and minerals? From our fruits and vegetables. How many of us are eating enough fruits and vegetables? In the example of the standard American diet that I gave earlier, they were making a very minimal appearance. The USRDA, the recommended daily allowance of fruits and vegetables, is 5 to 7 servings. And a serving is a half a cup. How many of us are eating that? I don't even get that every day, and I'm a nutritionist. In addition, studies show that because of our poor farming practices, our soils are very depleted of micronutrients. And so that means that the fruits and vegetables that we are eating today have less nutrients in them than they did several decades ago. So I want to address two other things here in a broad-based way: the issue of actual depletion, and the lack of protein. So I mentioned earlier that when we're eating processed food, it's not just an issue of we're not getting nutrients, it's an issue of actually depleting nutrients. So the body is pulling, for example, different micronutrients from its existing stores, such as bones. There's a lot of minerals in bones, in order to neutralize these foods we're putting in our body. One example: sugar depletes the body of magnesium. Where is there a lot of magnesium? In the bones. So a high sugar diet is going to mean your body is leaching a lot of those minerals from your bones. Lack of adequate protein. I'm going to talk more about this a little later on. But protein does a couple of really important things for us from a mental health standpoint. One, it helps us balance our blood sugar. And two, it is the material that we make our neurotransmitters out of. So if we are not eating enough protein in our diet, we are not getting the material that we need to even make serotonin, GABA, catecholamines like dopamine, endorphins. We are very likely to have mental health symptoms as a result. So I said I wanted to give you a lot of stories. I do. I have so many stories, but I'm just going to give you one here. This is an example of a woman who I was seeing her daughter, who is in early recovery from substance abuse, had amazing results from mental health nutrition. And I gave a talk, and her mom came, who I'm calling Charla. And Charla approached me after the talk and said, I think I should see you. I've had depression and anxiety and low energy for a long time. I think my diet might be connected. So I said, awesome, because I love doing this stuff. Come see me. She came in to see me, and during the first session, I pretty much always start with assessing digestive function, because the gut is the gateway to health, and looking at what's someone eating every day. Her digestion was okay. The issue was that she was eating the standard American diet. She was having a muffin for breakfast, pasta for lunch, and dinner would be some kind of protein and bread and maybe vegetable. So I educated her on some of these very same things that I'm educating you all on today. The fact that we evolved to eat plants and animals, and that we need nutrients, how depleting wheat is, the negative consequences of eating a lot of wheat. And so I talked to her about bringing in more nutrients, but because I don't put my clients on like strict meal plans or make them feel restrictive, I talked to her about substitutions. So just one example of this was muffins. I said, instead of buying those muffins from Safeway, what about me sending you a link to a site that has paleo recipes? And I can send you recipes for paleo muffins made with coconut flour, sweetened with honey. They have eggs in them, blueberries. They're really tasty. And she was really on board with this because she wanted to feel better. So she took my suggestions for shifting things around. She started doing, for example, brown rice pasta and bringing in vegetables and some meatballs. And she came back a week later and she said, my mood is much better and my energy is much better, and I don't think I need to see you again. I was like, okay, great. It can happen that quickly. So this brings me to my second principle that I want everyone to know. I really wish everyone knew this about blood sugar, that blood sugar dysregulation is often at the root of depression, anxiety, irritability, substance cravings, low energy, and poor focus. So I am going to give you all a little blood sugar 101 overview. I wish everyone in the world knew this. And I'm going to explain to you in a simple way. Don't worry, we're not going to get technical. Here's how blood sugar works. When you eat something, your blood sugar goes up, right? If you eat a carbohydrate, it's going to spike more. If you eat a complex carb, which is a carbohydrate in its whole form, so that's the fruit, vegetable, grain, it won't spike so much. It'll spike some. If you eat a simple carb, that is the refined carbohydrate, that is the Pop-Tart, sugar, soda, bread, pasta, candy, your blood sugar will spike a lot. When your blood sugar spikes, this is a state in the body that the body does not know what to do with. Because from an evolutionary perspective, when were we eating Pop-Tarts and soda? Like our body just is like, what? What is this? That's the technical reaction. It goes, what? What do we do with this? So it overcompensates and it actually causes the blood sugar to crash, okay? So here we have now one reason for low blood sugar is consuming just those processed carbs. What are other reasons for low blood sugar? Skipping meals, going too long without eating, not eating adequate protein and fat, not eating adequate amounts. So for all these reasons, we're going to end up with low blood sugar. How common is this low blood sugar in our American culture? Really common. We're eating a lot of processed carbs. We're skipping meals. We're not eating adequate protein sometimes. So when you have low blood sugar, how do you feel? People generally report feeling things like low energy, poor focus. Some people even feel depressed or pessimistic. What is all of this low energy and poor focus sounding like? These are reasons that people go to the psychiatrist and get psych meds. These are ADD, I can't focus. Maybe your blood sugar's low, right? I have depression, maybe your blood sugar's low. When your blood sugar is low, another thing that happens is that your body's trying to get your blood sugar back up, so it causes adrenaline to fire. That's your fight or flight. If you're fighting or fleeing, you need blood sugar to fight or flee. So this is adaptive. It's getting your blood sugar back up. But when your adrenaline is going, how do you feel? That is anxiety, irritability, can be straight up aggressive violence for some people, jitteriness. What else is happening when your adrenaline is going? When you are in fight or flight, do you know what's happening to your brain? You probably know intuitively. I'm going to spell it out for you. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that can access reason, logic, and impulse control, shuts off. We don't need it if we're fighting or fleeing. But what is that? What kind of repercussions does that have for us, our population of America that is constantly having this blood sugar roller coaster? We constantly have adrenaline firing. We can't access this. We know that sometimes when we're hungry, we say things that we normally wouldn't say and make decisions that we normally wouldn't, right? Now you know why. So this has very significant ramifications. So, when people are talking about, I'm anxious, I have poor impulse control, the first thing you look at is their blood sugar regulated? People knowledgeable about this prefrontal cortex issue who are in the substance abuse recovery world will also say this quote, the number one cause of relapse is a skipped meal, because they understand how important blood sugar balance is to keeping this judgment online and making good decisions. So how do we stabilize our blood sugar? Eat at regular intervals, eat your meals, eat adequate protein. If I have a meal where I don't have enough protein, an hour later I am craving chocolate. And I'm like, why am I craving chocolate? Oh, because I had that Thai dish that actually had sugar in it and only one little piece of chicken. Go eat some protein. Fat also helps anchor your blood sugar. What is the right amount of protein? That really differs from individual to individual because everyone is biochemically individual. We need different things based on our gender, our activity level, where we are in our lifespan, if we're pregnant. But I say someone like me, I'm 5'2", I weigh 110 pounds, I'm pretty active. I should have a minimum of 15 grams of protein every meal, and then protein every 4 or 5 hours so my blood sugar is not dropping. So I want to offer another story. This is a client that I had who came to me and said, I have sugar addiction. I binge on sugar. And of course, I started off, because I'm a mental health nutritionist and a therapist, I did not ask her about emotional reasons for eating sugar. I started off saying, take me through what you're eating in a day. She said, well, I wake up in the morning and I take my stimulants because I can't get going without them. and I'm not really hungry for breakfast. And a lot of times I don't eat lunch either. And then I go out to dinner with my husband, and then I end up binging on ice cream. Well, you can probably guess some of what I was going to say. I said to her, I don't think it's that you have a sugar addiction. I think you're hungry. This is why diets don't work. And she had been indoctrinated into that ridiculous, low fat, low cal diet mentality of the 70s and 80s that just has you end up binging because you're hungry. I said to her, your body is hardwired to need a certain amount of food every day and a certain amount of nutrients. And if your body does not get it, it is going to force you to get it one way or another. And I also said, I think that you need stimulants in the morning because you are not eating and you don't have any fuel. So I talked to her about bringing in breakfast, bringing in lunch, having a protein dense meal at each of those times, having some fruits and vegetables at each of those times. Sure enough, the sugar cravings dropped and her energy increased to where she did not need stimulants. One other brief thing I want to mention is that I have seen a handful of people with diagnoses of bipolar where the blood sugar dysregulation was a huge aspect. They were very sensitive to sugar and very sensitive to their blood sugar dropping. And when we were able to anchor their blood sugar, the mood swings stabilized out to a great degree. So now let's look at digestion, because really the gut is the gateway to health. It is where I start with mental health nutrition. And let's look at how the standard American lifestyle is impacting our digestive function. This brings me to the third principle. Impaired gut microbiome, so gut bacteria, and function almost inevitably causes problems with mood, sleep, energy, and or cravings. So when I'm meeting with a client for the first time and I'm talking to them about mental health nutrition, I explain to them, yes, you are what you eat, right? We have all heard that. There's nothing that makes up the cells of your body except what you put in your mouth. However, there's a huge caveat to that. You aren't exactly what you eat. You are what you absorb. So you can be eating a great quality diet that's very nutrient dense, but if you are not able to digest it and break it down and send those nutrients to where they need to go, you are not going to be making use of it. That is why we start with the gut. So the gut is responsible for all of these, which as you're starting to learn, these are all impacting mental health, digestion and absorption of food. If we are not digesting and absorbing our food, we may be low in certain nutrients that can cause mental health symptoms. The gut makes some nutrients. As we know, being low in that will probably cause mental health symptoms. The gut makes neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are not just made in the brain. Up to 90% of the serotonin that the body may manufacture is in the gut. So why, if a doctor thinks, oh, my patient is depressed, they have low serotonin, why is the first move to give them a drug that causes more serotonin to fire in the brain from the existing stores, rather than looking at the gut and going, is this working optimally the way it needs to? Is it able to manufacture as much serotonin as it can? Or is it inflamed and clogged down, and do we need to heal that so it can do its job? And the digestive system is also responsible for the immune response in part, including the inflammatory response. Now, what's so nice is that even in conventional medicine, doctors are starting to talk about the connection between inflammation and mood issues. And it is now kind of common knowledge that systemic inflammation can cause depression and anxiety. However, conventional doctors are not talking about where the inflammation comes from. It's the gut. It's our lifestyle. And they are not talking about how to heal it aside from take anti-inflammatories, which actually further disrupt the gut function and further create a negative effect on the gut microbiome. So inflammation in the gut can cause anxiety and depression. This is another reason why we start with looking at the gut. What is causing all these problems in our gut? Why are we all walking around with digestive issues? Standard American lifestyle. Processed foods irritate the gut and cause the bacteria to get out of balance. So do antibiotics, birth control, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, and all kinds of medications that conventional medicine gives for digestive problems. They have rebound effects that cause further problems in gut function. Alcohol, very inflammatory to the gut. Stress, very disruptive to the gut in a number of ways. I've seen studies connecting poor sleep with impaired gut function. Lack of exercise can have a negative impact on your gut function. So basically, the way we're all living, we're going to have problems with our guts. How do we know if we have problems with our guts? We never talk about this stuff. Why? I talk about this stuff at the first session with all of my clients. All of my clients. We need to know what's normal. And your birthright is on any given day to have all of these not be problems. Constipation. We should be having at least one dark, well-formed bowel movement every day. People don't know that. I've had people come in and give a 0 rating for their constipation. And I say, okay, so you're having at least one dark, well-formed bowel movement a day. And they say no. And I say, well, how often? And they say 2 or 3 times a week. You are constipated. And you don't have to live with this. This is a symptom. This is an indicator that something is out of balance and we can heal that. Diarrhea, same thing. We should only have diarrhea if we have a stomach bug or food poisoning, or if we ate something that we know irritates our gut. Bloating. I didn't even know what bloating was until my late 20s when I went to holistic nutrition school. I thought, oh, you eat something and your stomach just sticks out. That's just how it goes. No, that's fermentation in your gut. Gas. We should not be having frequent malodorous gas. This is also an indicator of gut dysbiosis and fermentation. Pain. It should not hurt. It should not hurt. Bad taste in the mouth, bad breath. This is a really sad one because this makes people feel very self-conscious, and really they just get told brush your teeth more or floss or gargle with mouthwash. Well, this is one end of your digestive tract. So if things are sitting and fermenting in your gut, that same bacterial situation is very likely to come up here in your mouth and cause bad breath and bad taste in the mouth. So heal the gut, this changes. Skin issues are an indicator of problematic digestion. When we have acne, eczema, psoriasis, hives, very likely this indicates that our digestive system is not detoxing adequately and the skin is taking over and trying to do that job. So when people come in to see me, they think they're just seeing me for their PTSD, their eating disorder, their anxiety, their depression. They don't know that an awesome side effect of the work we're doing is that, oh, that acne is going to clear up because we're going to heal your gut. That chronic constipation, that's going to change too because we're going to heal your gut. Asthma, similar to skin, if the gut is not detoxing properly, sometimes it has an impact on the lungs. And then allergies. Briefly, food allergies occur in the following way. The large intestine is lined with bacteria, which is 1 cell thick, ideally. This is your gut microbiome. It does amazing things. It's some of what makes your neurotransmitters. It makes nutrients, helps with your immune function. But part of its job is to protect that fragile intestinal wall. When our gut bacteria is out of balance, which happens from the standard American lifestyle, that wall becomes compromised and holes occur, exposing the gut lining. When that happens, microscopic bits of food and other pathogens can poke through the gut and enter the rest of the body. A large part of the immune system is located around the gut. It's called the gut-associated lymphatic tissue. And so when they see that microscopic bit of food coming out, they attack it as a foreign invader. That's how allergies start. So we heal food allergies by healing digestion. So I have so many examples of people seeing dramatic improvements in their mental health just from healing the digestion. Here's one. I had a woman come to me who was reporting depression and nicotine cravings. She had been smoking for a long time. She had tried to quit so many times and she couldn't stop. I looked at her gut function. It was very poor. She had very high ratings for constipation and diarrhea and bloating. So I worked with her to heal her gut. She didn't actually need any modifications with her nutrition. She was eating very well. She knew a lot about nutrition. But I said for the first session, all we're going to do is focus on giving your gut a spa treatment. And I made suggestions for her with supplements. When she came back next session, her mood was much better. And she had stopped smoking 4 days before and hadn't had the urge to pick it up again. Why? Why did this happen? In this case, I believe it was, remember that serotonin connection, and remember how the gut is able to make a lot of serotonin and an impaired gut is not able to make a lot of serotonin? Low serotonin can cause depression. Low serotonin can also cause cravings for certain substances, including nicotine. When her gut started to heal, she started to make more serotonin. It helped with her mood and it dropped her cravings. So I told her, okay, contact me if you have cravings come back up, or, just email me in a couple of weeks and tell me how you are. She shot me an email a few weeks later. She said, I'm still not smoking. My mood's still good. My gut's still so much better. Thank you. And last I heard, because she's a sister of a friend of mine, she's still not smoking. This is why I do this stuff. This is why I'm so happy you are all on this webinar, so that you can know that this functional medicine for mental health exists and you can spread the word and tell people. I want to leave you all really with my philosophy around how the body works. I believe your birthright on this planet on any given day, not a stressful day, not a day where you ate a whole pizza, but on a typical day, is to have decent mood, decent sleep, decent energy, decent focus, decent digestion, no headache, no skin problems, etc. Remember, all of these are symptoms. We live in a world that tells us if you've got something wrong with you, you're just broken. Here, just take this pill to kind of numb it out and you got to manage. I don't see it that way. If symptoms are present, these indicate an imbalance. And the majority of the time, these imbalances can be rectified using natural approaches, which means then the symptom can calm down. So in review, what am I teaching you about? Just the basics of mental health nutrition. We heal the gut because you are what you absorb, and the gut is the gateway to health. We stabilize blood sugar because dysregulated blood sugar can cause those mental health problems. And then we focus on eating what our bodies were designed to eat, which is whole, nutrient-dense food, but without being restrictive, without driving yourself crazy about it, because we still need to function in this world and indulge sometimes. Just in case you thought it was that easy, a lot of times it is. Those interventions I told you about, they help significantly for the majority of people. But if those don't do it, these are other things that with mental health nutrition, I look at with my clients. I look at how to support specific neurotransmitters and nutrients that they might be low in. I look at whether some of their issues are stemming from hormone imbalance and how to heal that naturally, because you can also support the production of certain neurotransmitters naturally. I look at, might their thyroid be low? Might that be causing the depression and low energy? Let's heal that naturally. There are many, many other little pieces that I look at. And so along those lines, because this time is so emotionally disruptive for so many people, and because I'm so glad to be on this call spreading this information to you, I want to make this offer to all of you Smithies on this call and to your family members. So if this offer that I'm about to give you doesn't work for you, you can pass it on to your partner or your child or your sibling or your parent. And this is that I'm offering you a 3-session mental health nutrition package for $375. It's usually $450. 3 sessions is basically the minimum that we need to get a foundation under our feet. Most people only need 3 sessions. Sometimes people need up to 5. It's kind of a one and done thing. We balance you, and unless something else happens in your life really to cause imbalance, you're good to go. The first session, we're looking at assessing how your gut is working and how to heal your gut so that you can make maximum neurotransmitters. You can process your food as much as you can to get those nutrients where they need to go and calm down that inflammation that could be causing the mental health issues. We also look at how you're eating. And I never tell someone not to eat something. I don't give people meal plans, but I will educate you about a way of eating and an overall philosophy that is sustainable and supportive and occasionally even indulgent. And then the last is looking at supporting that neurotransmitter production. What might you be low in? How do we boost that naturally? So, because I don't have infinite room in my schedule, I'm asking if you are interested in this to please contact me as soon as possible, because I expect that I will fill up with this quickly. So please email me by Friday, April 24th to say that you want in on this, and we would need to schedule by Monday, May 4th. And all sessions do have to be used within 5 weeks. Okay, so let's do Q&A now. And I'm gonna stop share and bring it back over to you, Lindsay. Do you want to do this, or should I go through the chat?
So we've had a lot of good questions coming.
Oh, I haven't even looked.
In.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Yay! I'm excited.
Yeah. So lots of good questions here, and I'm not sure what the best way to start.
I can just start with the first question I see. Oh wait, okay. Yeah. Okay.
We have, I want to answer, there were a few questions that came in about the recording, and some have jumped off, but we are recording this. It will be posted on the Smith College YouTube channel. There's a playlist for alumni webinars. So you can look for it there, and it'll hopefully be posted within 1 week. So for any of the folks that want to revisit it, you can go there. And yeah, so why don't you start with the first question you see, and I'll kind of sift through for some more of the themes.
Okay, so the first question I see is, what is the inpatient where I did this? This was Cordilleras in Redwood City, California. Yeah. A book or two about sugar. Oh my God, there are so many. I really like Sugar Blues. I think that's a good place to start. Muffin recipe. I'm going to give you all an amazing resource. So this is a website from a woman named Alana Amsterdam, Alana with an E. Her website is Alana's Pantry. And again, Alana with an E. She is here in Boulder. She was diagnosed with MS, and she was able to remain relatively symptom-free for a long time by just changing her diet. And so on her website, she has numerous recipes that are gluten-free, sugar-free, paleo. She's now into keto, but go on there. What I like about her is that she has a lot of recipes for desserts that taste good and don't have a lot of ingredients. Sometimes when you're baking this way, you look at the ingredients list and it's like 20 ingredients long, and you're like, I'm not doing that. Hers are very simple. So Alana's Pantry, Alana with an E. Do you have a position on intermittent fasting? Haha. It's funny, you know, I'm teaching my course to therapists right now on mental health and nutrition, and the same question came up. Okay, I have a lot of thoughts about intermittent fasting. Let me try and make this brief. You need to have pretty stable blood sugar to be able to do it. The argument is that it itself stabilizes blood sugar. I have a theory that women are poorer at regulating their blood sugar than men. This is because of personal experience with clients, and also looking at, there are a lot of, these ultra athletes right now who are vegan. There's documentaries about it. Here in Boulder, there's a lot of that. I feel like it's a lot of men that are able to do that, that are able to maintain a vegan diet. Therefore, they can regulate their blood sugar easier, right? Because there's less protein, and it's harder for women. I just kind of hear that from female athletes. So all that is to say that I think that the intermittent fasting, I generally hear, whenever I hear people saying, this is amazing and it's working for me so well, it's men who are saying that. Take that for what it's worth. It is more of a match to how our ancestors ate. Our ancestors weren't eating 3 meals a day. But yeah, I think it's a very individual thing. For people who just recovered from alcoholism, wouldn't vitamin deficiencies show up in a normal blood test in the annual checkup? I don't know how often annual checkups are testing for all vitamins and minerals. I don't think that's common unless you ask for it. Um, and you are not also going to find out about neurotransmitter deficiencies in a normal blood test. Um, any thoughts about the way meat is produced in the US? How to ensure a protein dense meal with all the issues in mainstream meat industry? Yeah. I mean, that's why I initially became vegan. I'm not vegan anymore. It didn't work for my body. Um, Factory farmed meat is terrible for many reasons, as we all know. Um, I think that some people need meat. I think that some people don't need meat. Everyone is biochemically individual. And actually, one of the ways that I work with my clients is I teach them practices for listening to their body and really hearing that yes or no, and hearing what is true for them about, do I need meat? Do I need grains? This and that. Because your body really should be the ultimate authority, more than what I say or anyone else says. Because otherwise, you're just going to get confused all the time. For me, the meat that I consume, I am lucky enough to live in a place where I can access meat from local farms. So I can see the chickens that laid the eggs. I can see the cows that are slaughtered, and go into the meat. And so there's many layers of, the animal is of better quality. The meat is of better quality. I know the practices and how they're processing it and raising the animals. I'm able to support local, and I'm able not to put my money into these large factory farms that I really don't agree with ethically. Can I speak about nutrition and anxiety right now, especially right now when the fight or flight response is so frequent with current world circumstances? I could talk about that for like 3 hours. Now you know about the connection between anxiety and blood sugar, right? So when the blood sugar drops, the adrenaline fires, there goes some anxiety. So in this time, it's always crucial to keep your blood sugar regulated, but it's especially crucial now. Anxiety can also arise from eating foods that you are allergic to. Anxiety can also occur from being low in certain neurotransmitters, specifically GABA and serotonin. Low serotonin is more like anxiety and panic. Low GABA is more like the overwhelm type of anxiety. And when I work with my clients, I work with them on educating them on supplements that they can take to support the production of both of those naturally. And people really like them, and you can see a difference quickly because they're actually just concentrated protein. So you consume it, and in 20 minutes you can feel a difference. I take some of them myself. Yeah, I think those are probably the main principles that I want to say about nutrition and anxiety. Non-meat protein, how to make up a complete protein without turning to meat. So that's when you pair the plant-based protein with the grain. That makes a complete protein. Plant-based proteins are things like beans, legumes. Tofu is a plant-based protein. I'm not a huge fan of consuming a lot of tofu. Number one, because soy, it tends to be GMO unless it's organic. Number two, because it's estrogenic in the body. It does resemble the estrogen molecule. And so a diet high in soy can cause similar problems to high estrogen. It is irritating to the gut. And there were no native cultures that consumed soy in high levels. But if you take, for example, beans and rice or beans and corn, that is going to get you to a complete protein. The next question, can we get a recording? Sounds like yes. How to increase protein intake for vegan and vegetarians. First of all, I have a fair amount of clients that are vegan and vegetarians. And first I'm talking with them about, like, is that truly right for you? Is that right for your body? And if we determine it is, which it absolutely might be, they're just going to have to bring in a lot of those beans and legumes, and they make a lot of use of protein powder. So if you get a protein powder that is hemp-based or pea-based or brown rice-based, those are all vegan options. If you're vegetarian, you may be doing also dairy and eggs, and those have protein as well. I don't feel well when I eat meat. My stomach has a hard time digesting meat. My belly is upset. I also don't like meat. Instead, I eat fruit, vegetable, and yogurt all day long. Is this bad? Well, here's the deal. If your stomach has a hard time digesting meat, we need to understand why. And that's a big clue for me that your digestion is not working well. So I often have people coming to me saying, I can't digest meat. I don't feel well when I eat it. And then we assess their digestion in general. And it's like, your digestion is poor. Your digestion is just not working well. So when we get that working better, are you able to digest that meat better? That may happen, right? I think that I can't say eating fruit, vegetable, and yogurt all day long is bad or good. It depends on many, many other factors. There's a much broader context to place that in. So I'd really need to talk with you and meet with you to find out if the way you're eating is actually most supportive to you or not. How can I properly educate myself on good nutrition? I feel like this subject should be taught in school. There's so much misinformation out there. Can you recommend reliable resources? I love this question, and you are right. You're right. We should know this. We're taught the stupid food pyramid, which is not even a good thing. It's not even accurate. I actually might launch a course for the layperson on foundations of mental health nutrition. So if that interests you, shoot me an email and I'll keep you posted. I feel like the number one thing that people need to learn to do is to listen to their intuition and their body. And that is why I teach these intuitive eating and listening to your body practices to my clients, because otherwise you're going to be overwhelmed with all of the nutrition information out there and not know who to listen to. You're also going to be able to sift through things that inherently don't make sense to you from a gut wisdom standpoint. For example, I heard that there is this new studies out there and information out there about doing like a purely meat diet, like a purely carnivore diet. That's it. No plants, no fruits, no vegetables. That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. So I mean, it's tough because I could recommend to you different places to follow, but they all argue for different types of diets. I mean, I study with the Weston A. Price Foundation because they have this goal of bringing our traditional foodways into the modern mainstream. And I am totally in alignment with that because that's how we evolved to eat. At the same time, they're very pro meat. And there are people who I believe don't need to eat meat. So, small amounts of red wine is supposed to be heart healthy. Is this really unhealthy? Red wine is high in antioxidants. That's why they say small amounts of red wine is good for you. But red wine is not for everyone. My body doesn't like it. My recommendation for repairing the gut biome, that's why people come see me. So this is a whole issue of having someone who's trained assess what's going on with your gut and making recommendations that are specifically tailored to what you need. To repair gut bacteria, I mean, probiotic is important, fermented foods are important. The diet that you're taking in every day is also huge because that has a huge impact on your gut biome. But there are so many other things too. Some people are low in stomach acid and need their stomach acid supported. Some people need to improve their bile function because their bile is not strong enough. So really, like, that question, that's kind of what I do in a whole individualized session. Someone wants to know the 4 books that I read in my job, my crash course in the subject. Okay, cool. So that was The Mood Cure by Julia Ross, 7 Weeks to Sobriety by Joan Matthews Larson. This is specifically mental health nutrition for alcoholism, because I was working at that substance abuse recovery center. What else? Oh, Gut and Psychology Syndrome by Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. What else? Let me look over here, because they're all up here. Oh, I don't remember what the fourth was. It could have been a lot of things, but it was definitely those three. Definitely those three, but there's so many more. Specific probiotic supplement brand recommendations, I find that you get what you pay for. I find that refrigerated are better quality than shelf stable. I recommend getting ones with a minimum of 1 billion CFUs, colony forming units. Someone else is asking how to improve gut health. Again, that's what I do with my clients in a session. It's very individualized. Yeah. Do I work with holistic doctors to test levels? I don't test levels right now. If I feel that someone needs a test, I will refer out to a doctor. But most of what I do can be done without actual testing. Do I treat teens? Absolutely. Depletion, I don't know what that is. Oh, the interplay between blood sugar and caffeine. So remember that, so someone's asking about, I'm curious about the interplay between blood sugar and caffeine. So remember, caffeine, what does that do? That fires adrenaline, right? And do you remember what I said happens when adrenaline goes up? Blood sugar has to go up with it, because adrenaline is preparing us for fight or flight. So the blood sugar is fueling that, but is then going to crash. So caffeine on its own is going to create a blood sugar roller coaster. A lot of people know that when they drink caffeine, they feel anxious and jittery. This is why, that's that adrenaline. So for stabilizing blood sugar, I would recommend not drinking a lot of caffeine on its own. I would recommend drinking caffeine with protein, because remember, protein is what anchors the blood sugar. Oh, let's see. Do I take into account existing medicines a person's taking? Of course, yes. And there are certain contraindications. If someone's already taking psychiatric medications, you do need to take that into account when you're thinking about how to support the production of those same neurotransmitters. Sorry, I am a woman doing it and it works really well. Have been doing 1 meal a day for 21 days. I think they're talking about intermittent fasting. Great. Diane, thank you for saying that. Like, I'm glad it's working for you. And I'm definitely not trying to discourage women from doing it. It's just what I've seen in general tends to be men that are having more success. But if you're doing it and it's from a sustainable standpoint, it's not about crash dieting or restricting, and it's really, you feel like it's helping with your health. Cool. I think I'm going to pause there because we're close to the end, and just kind of check in with you, Lindsay, and see if there's anything else we need to do before we wrap up. And anyone else who has questions, you're welcome to email me.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people have been asking, what's your email to sign up?
Oh, okay.
Or to email questions as well.
My email is info, I-N-F-O, like information, at stephaniesmallhealth.com, and I'll type it here in the box. And you can also just go to my website, which is stephaniesmallhealth.com, and email me there.
And I've also, I put it into the chat as well, but it'll be good to have it at the end. You did a great job of sifting through these questions. You went through all of them in a row that you could get to. There were so many that came in and that are still coming in. So thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I am so glad that we had so many people on this call, and that now we have almost 100 more people who know that mental health nutrition is a thing, who know that you can do functional medicine for mental health and it works. And can I make a plea to everyone? Actually, I am such a preacher about this stuff. Like I am on such a mission about spreading the word about this. And so my plea to all of you is that sometime in the next few days, I want you to think of 3 people that you know that need to know that this is out there and that would benefit from this information, and just tell them like, hey, I listened to this call or I did this webinar about mental health nutrition. And did you know there's so much you can do? And it's not just about food, but with healing your gut and supporting your neurotransmitters, you can do it naturally. That psych meds are not the only option. People want this and they don't know it's out there.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, the recording will be available in the next week if you want to share it with those folks as well. I can think of 3 people in my family right now.
Yay.
Share this with.
Yay. Thanks, Layla.
Yeah.
Thanks, Liz. She's like, I'm taking screenshots.
That is smart.
That makes me happy. This is why I do this. I give a lot of talks. I give a lot of free information, and it is because I want people to know.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not getting paid for this.
And yeah, no, you're not. So, and also, what was I going to say? Now I'm forgetting, but, we really appreciate you, sharing your information and your time today. I do want to be mindful of it and everybody else. Share the video. I want to make sure. Huge thanks to Smith for organizing this. I'm so happy that so many were able to attend. And again, please share it out, and email Stephanie for any additional questions that you had that we weren't able to get to. Thank you all for attending today. Wonderful. All right.
Thank you all so much. I hope everyone stays safe and healthy. And by the way, do you remember that I said that a large part of your immune system is located around your gut? And that means working well with your gut and feeding your gut well is going to have a positive effect on your immune system. So important to remember in these times. Okay, now I'm done. Thank you all.
Sure. Have a good afternoon.
Bye. Stay healthy.
You too.